One of the easiest ways to design failure in advertising is have a marketing message that is about the practice. If the idea is we're going to randomly pick a budget to spend, we're going to randomly do some advertising, and then we're going to ask people how they found out about the practice, you will never uncover any actionable data. The messaging must be about what the patients are feeling, and the design of the campaign, the design of the budget must be built out of your numbers. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose the root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Ed Williamson, and I believe that everything we experience in life is the perfect outcome of our current system. So if we don't like what we're experiencing, no worries. We just got to take a step back and tweak the system. Now, sometimes I'll do talks at conferences and we'll throw different questions up on the screen and you get different feedback. And sometimes there's practices that are dealing with an issue of constraint around too many patients in their practice. And sometimes it's the opposite, that there's open capacity. So I want to talk about the open capacity portion for a moment. I want you to imagine that you're looking at your schedule and you feel that there is unused space. Or your schedule feels full, but it's not generating the business outcome that you're looking for. So going back to what I believe, imagine you're in either of those scenarios. Remember that you are operating a system that is perfectly generating those scenarios. You may not be doing it purposefully, but I always think that there's value in owning it and putting it completely on your shoulders so that we can dig in and see what can we do. Now, one of the things that practices choose to do is sometimes they do marketing or advertising to get new patients. And this can be very effective. It can also be a total waste of money. As most things, it can fall to either side. And again, it's the system that creates that outcome. There is no such thing as a practice trying to advertise, and sometimes it works or sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work, that means it was designed to fail. If it does work, that means it was designed to succeed. So what are the parts of designing to succeed, and what should we avoid so that we're not designing something to fail? Well, first of all, and this came up in a conversation that I had with a practice last night. They had hired a new person, and they were going to start doing some marketing content, and they were going to start promoting the practice to more people. And that is a mistake. I'll let that settle in. As humans, we got these fancy brains, pretty predictable. Something that is in all of our brain is called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. If you think about it, I like to just mentally envision it's this no trespassing sign to consciousness. It mainly basically, shields us from paying attention to things that don't matter to us. And we believe that danger matters to us and lack of danger doesn't matter to us from an attention standpoint. If we can emotionally connect to something, our RAS will let it through. If we can't, our RAS blocks it. So if you do advertising that is talking about the existence of your practice, and that you do things, the brains you're trying to change the behavior of are literally not consuming that message. So one of the easiest ways to design failure in advertising is have a marketing message that is about the practice. That's the priority. The goal of the message is let's educate people about our existence. Let's tell people what we do. And it feels good. It's just going to be a waste of money. So we don't want to do that. So what's the other side of that? Well, if we pay attention to what gets through that reticular activating system, it is emotion. So we want to identify where the patient is in their pain. If we can talk to the patient in our advertising messaging about where they are in their current state that is frustrating them, now the brain will give us attention. And now they will allow us to say, hey, it might make sense for us to book a new patient appointment. So the first thing, and it's an easy way to look Look at any advertising messaging, look at any kind of brochures you have in the office, maybe posters that are promoting services, maybe your website, and just ask yourself, are we talking about us, or are we identifying with the struggles of the patient? If you're talking about the practice or you, not good. Talking about the patient and what they're struggling with, good. So if we get through that part, now what do we do about determining how much money we should spend? How do we know that advertising works? I was talking to another practice, and they were frustrated because they were working with a company and they were advertising, and they were thinking to themselves, like, how am I going to know that doing this effort actually benefited me, or did I just light money on fire in trying to promote the practice and get more patients? And that's a really important concern. We all want to wonder those things, but typically how it gets measured is wrong. So if we wanted to design failure around measuring the value of advertising or developing a budget, what we would do is we would do something like ask patients how they found out about the practice. And that might seem strange to you. Well, Zed, that's the only way we can determine it. It's not the only way, and it's a very false way. Working with practices for almost 15 years now, it's not a viable way to understand how someone came about coming to your practice. And so if the idea is we're going to randomly pick a budget to spend, we're going to randomly do some advertising, and then we're going to ask people how they found out about the practice, you will never uncover any actionable data. Likely, you will uncover information that, based on what you believe, will tell you one or the other thing. Meaning, if you believe the advertising is working, then you're probably going to find enough people who said they heard about you that way. If you believe the advertising is not working, even with the same number of answers, your brain's going to say, yeah, I knew it, we're not getting enough. So what do we do instead? Are you a private practice leader dealing with team drama, growth headaches, or just trying to keep your head above water? Introducing the Physician Growth Accelerator membership, a free resource for our podcast listeners like you to get real solutions. Inside, you'll find exclusive materials, free courses, bonus podcast content, and live events, all designed to help your practice grow. It's free for now, so don't wait. Visit physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and click Members to join today. First of all, let's look at what capacity we're talking about. Is this 5 patients a month, 20 patients a month, 100 patients a month? What are we trying to drive into the practice realistically? Put a specific number on it, and then challenge yourself on that number. Meaning, is that a blue sky, maybe it could happen once in 10 years number? Or is this realistically what is healthy for the practice from the standpoint of this type of patient? I want 17 more of these patients a month. Whatever that number is, be real about that number. Now, determine what is the value of this patient. This is really easy to do. You go into your information and you pull out patients like that from your current your EMR, and you look at what is the value of all the reimbursements generated from the efforts of seeing this type of patient. And you lump it all together and divide it by the number of the patients that you did the report on. So let's say you go back and you say, let's look at 100 patients. And let's say you do the math and you divide the revenue by the total number of patients based on these CPT codes, and the total number is $1,000 per patient. So now you're saying that you have 17 as a target and that these patients are worth $7,000 each, so the value potential is $17,000. So generally, depending on profit margin, you're going to want to spend no more than a third of that to generate that dollar amount. So let's say about $6,000. That would be how you would potentially determine a budget, okay? So let's say you do that campaign, whatever the advertising is, you've got the messaging right, but you remember I said asking people how they heard about us is not the way to know if it's working. So what do? Well, you have access to data. You know how many of these types of patients you're seeing on a weekly or monthly basis. You had decided to increase that number by 17. So for instance, let's say you're going into August, and in July you saw 40 of these patients. In June, you saw 38 of these patients. In May, you saw 41 of these patients. And you say, okay, on average, we generally see 40 of this type of patient. And I want 17 more a month, which means in the month of August, with advertising, we should be trending to see 57 patients. Now, if we get to 57 patients, it doesn't matter if we ask people how they heard about us or where they found us, you're starting to witness that the outcome of the campaign is doing what it's supposed to do. And depending on the type of advertising, impacts how quick things happen. And it's always good to work with someone who understands those platforms so you're not, flying blind. But you see how simple we can make this is we need to set a goal in the future, this future state in which we are going to go witness. And then we're going to create the path to do it. And then along the path, we're going to check, okay, are we getting there? Are we getting there? Are we getting there? Are we getting there? And then at the end of the month, you might say, well, you know what? We didn't do 57, but we did 52. Okay. Let's look at September. How's that? Well, September climbed up to 54. Okay. October, 55. Okay. And you're going to start to get data to understand, is there something to change to nudge it up a little bit more? Is some of the advertising doesn't seem like it's doing the work, so we reduce our budget? Was the goal wrong? Does it turn out that there's constraints within the office that make adding 17 of these types of patients really unrealistic because maybe the appointment times are too far out and these patients cancel or no-show? So the good thing about having all this information is you can truly create a system with a predicted outcome, and you can track your way towards that outcome to know that you're on the right path or not on the right path. So if you have open capacity in your practice and you're thinking about advertising, or if you feel full, but the value of the patients aren't really achieving what you're looking for, advertising can help you a lot. But remember, let's not design failure. The messaging must be about what the patients are feeling, and the design of the campaign, the design of the budget must be built out of your numbers so that you can go and set this future state to go achieve on purpose and march your way there. This is something that we help clients with all the time, and it's a lot of fun when it feels like you have your hand on the throttle in driving in very specific patients. So if you ever want to talk more about it, please feel free to reach out to us. Also, visit physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals. See if there's something about your practice that's just jumping out at you that might be a constraint that's keeping you from achieving your goals. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Physician Growth Accelerator.